In the hush of a marriage, grown too comfortable, where silences stretch like shadows across familiar rooms, Mara Ellison turns her lens inward, not to expose the world, but to reclaim the one slipping from her grasp. Her camera, once a tool for distant truths, now seeks the unspoken rift with Evan, the architect whose blueprints map everything but their fading connection. As dawn breaks on another unremarkable day, she positions it to witness the morning light slants through the kitchen window, golden at first, warming the edges of the oak table where Mara and Evan sit. She adjusts the camera on its tripod, framing the shot. 2 mugs steaming faintly, a half-eaten slice of toast crumbling under Evan's fork. The lens catches the rhythm they've perfected, him scrolling through blueprints on his tablet, her stirring oats with measured circles. No words yet, just the soft clink of spoon against porcelain, the hum of the fridge settling into quiet. Mara steps back, checks the viewfinder. The image is steady, almost idyllic. Evan's profile sharp against the glow, her own hand entering the frame to pour coffee. She feels the warmth on her skin, a fleeting comfort in the steam rising like unspoken promises. But as she pans slightly, the light shifts, subtle, unbidden, eclipsed by the building's shadow creeping across the wall. It dims the corner where their chairs nearly touch, turning the gold to a muted amber. Evan clears his throat, not quite a sound, more a vibration in the air. He sets down his fork, eyes still on the screen. Mara pauses the recording, rewinds a beat, watches the playback, their faces composed, smiles practiced for the lens. The silence stretches, not empty but weighted, like the pause before a question neither will ask. She restarts the camera, her pulse quickening, just enough to notice the calm surface rippling beneath. He glances up, catches her eye for a second. "Good morning," he says, voice even, polite. She nods, returns to the oats, but the light fades another inch, pooling shadows under the table. The camera whirs on, capturing it all, the ritual intact, the rift just out of focus. What lingers unsaid feels sharper now, a quiet pull at the edges of trust. Later that afternoon, the camera hums softly in the corner of Danica's office, a modest space bathed in the afternoon's slanting light, warm on the wooden desk, cooler on the unadorned walls. Mara adjusts her position behind the lens, her fingers lingering on the focus ring. She's curious, genuinely, as she frames Danica's face. Sharp cheekbones, eyes that hold steady without flinching. The therapist sits poised, hands folded, a faint smile playing at the edges of her mouth, like she's already 3 steps ahead. "So, this creeping disconnect," Mara begins, her voice even, professional. "In long-term relationships, how does it start? Not the big fights, the quiet ones that build up." Danica nods, leaning forward slightly. The light catches the glint of her earrings. "It's the drift, isn't it? Like a current you don't notice until you're miles from shore. Partners stop asking the small questions. 'How was your day?' becomes rote, and soon you're orbiting each other without touching. It's loneliness in tandem, both feeling it, but neither saying the word." Mara's thumb hovers over the record button, but she's already rolling. The raw footage captures it all. Danica's measured pauses, the way her gaze drifts to the window, as if pulling from some unseen case file. Curiosity pulls Mara in deeper. She leans closer to the viewfinder, watching how Danica's words layer like sediment. What if it's not just theory? The thought flickers, unbidden. Evan's back turned this morning, the coffee mug left cold on the counter. But she steers clear, keeps her questions general, probing the edges of other people's silences. And the fear of naming it. Mara presses, her tone light, exploratory. Does admitting the distance make it real? Or does it bridge it? Danica tilts her head, considering. It exposes the fracture. But silence. That's the real expander. It lets the gap widen until you're strangers sharing a bed. I've seen couples wait too long, thinking composure will hold it together. It doesn't. Loneliness festers when unspoken. The words land softly, but they stir something in Mara, a subtle tightening in her chest. She glances at the monitor beside the camera, the unedited reel ticking forward. Danica's face, unguarded in the raw feed, pixels unpolished, truths half-veiled. No cuts yet, no edits to smooth the unease. Mara's mind races ahead. Evan's polite nods over dinner, the way their conversations skim the surface, like stones on water. Is this what it looks like from the outside? Her curiosity curdles into a low hum of anxiety, a whisper she can't quite mute. What if she aimed the lens inward? But the question hangs, camera still rolling, the air between them thick with what neither will touch. In the studio that same evening, the fluorescent hum of Mara's studio cut through the late afternoon light, casting long shadows across scattered tapes and monitors. Leo leaned against the editing desk, arms crossed, his producer's grin sharp as a deadline. Come on, Mara. This trust doc? It's drifting into snooze territory. Give me fireworks, tears, blowouts, something that hooks the algorithm. Viewers crave the mess. Mara paused, her fingers hovering over the keyboard, the unedited reel flickering on the screen. Grainy shots of couples murmuring half-truths, silences stretching like frayed wires. Her chest tightened, a familiar strain pulling at her ribs, the weight of Evan's quiet retreat last night, unspoken over dinner. She met Leo's eyes, voice steady but edged. It's not about fireworks. The real story's in the pauses, the way trust unravels without a bang. He chuckled, waving a hand. Pauses don't pay bills. Sensationalize it. Stage a fight. Amp the drama. Your marriage angle. Gold if you lean in. The words landed like a prod, her pulse quickening. Stage it? Exploit the cracks she and Evan tiptoed around, the fading warmth in their apartment's glow? No. The reel looped silently. Raw confessions from strangers mirroring her own buried doubts. She straightened, the strain ebbing into resolve, a quiet fire kindling. I'm not staging anything. Tonight, I'll film us. Just an ordinary evening. The small distances, the unsaid. That's the truth worth selling. Leo's brow furrowed, but she turned away, ejecting the tape with deliberate care. And how does that pressure sit with you, Evan? Beyond the work? He paused, gaze drifting to the window, where the city skyline blurred in haze. It sits fine. I keep it functional. That's what we do, right? Build things that hold. Mara's breath caught. Functional. The word landed like a poorly aligned joint, hiding the warp beneath. She pressed record, the tiny red light flickering to life in her palm. A secret pulse. Ethics clawed at her. This wasn't an interview subject. This was Evan, unraveling in fragments. Where did her lens stop being truth and start being theft? Her fingers trembled, anxiety coiling tight in her chest, urging her to stop, to delete the feed before it captured too much. But she didn't. She watched him build another wall, brick by rational brick, talking of load-bearing walls and client approvals, never the weight he carried alone. The camera whirred softly, capturing the unedited reel, his averted eyes, the faint crease between his brows, the way his voice flattened when he said, "Everything's under control." Distance yawned between them, his words skimming the surface while her questions burned unspoken. As he wrapped up, standing to shake the therapist's hand, Mara killed the recording. The file sat heavy in her device, raw and unpolished, a mirror to the cracks she feared exposing. Fear of her own weakness, of admitting she needed this glimpse to bridge the gap, ebbed into something sharper. Resolve. She'd keep it, for now. Pain demanded witnessing, even if trust hung by the thread of her silence. She slipped the camera away as Evan turned, offering a polite smile. Ready to go? The next week, during another interview, the camera lingers on the couple across the dim-lit interview space, their faces half-shadowed by the soft glow of a single lamp. Mara adjusts her lens from behind the partition, curiosity pulling her focus sharp. She's here for the raw edges, the unscripted slips that make a story breathe. The woman, Elena, cradles a chipped ceramic mug, its twin in her husband's hand, both etched with faint, hairline fractures that catch the light like whispered warnings. Steam curls from the coffee, untouched. It started so quietly, Elena says, her voice steady, but eyes distant. We'd talk about the day, work, the kids. But the real stuff? The drift? It snuck in like fog. One morning, I realized I hadn't asked him what he was feeling in weeks. Not really. Her husband, Raj, nods, fingers tracing the mug's rim. I thought silence meant we were fine. No fights, no drama. But it wasn't peace. It was absence. Like we'd become roommates in our own life. Mara's breath catches, her mind snagging on the words. Absence. She zooms in tighter, capturing the subtle lean between them, the way their mugs mirror each other. Cracked, but still paired. Curiosity hums in her chest. These strangers are laying bare what she films, but never touches. How does the quiet build walls? She jots a mental note. Cutaway to their hands, the steam dissolving. But as Elena continues, we woke up one day and the trust was just eroded. I was too scared to say it first. The curiosity twists. Mara's thoughts spiral inward. Evan and I, our mornings with coffee, the same mugs on the counter. When did I stop asking? The partition feels thinner now, her own silence echoing theirs. Anxiety coils low in her gut, a tightening thread. What if her questions, unspoken, buried, have already carved those cracks deeper? She lowers the camera slightly, pulse quickening, the room's warmth turning cloying. Raj sets his mug down, the clink sharp. Admitting it felt like breaking something, but not saying it, that was the real shatter. Mara exhales, footage rolling, but her mind fracturing. The mugs sit there, paired and imperfect, a quiet accusation. Is she ready to turn the lens on her own fog? That evening, back home, Mara's hand trembled as she hit play on the laptop, the raw footage flickering across the screen. Their breakfast ritual captured in stolen frames, the golden light slanting through the window like a reluctant witness. Evan's face, inches from hers in the recording, held that same polite distance, his coffee mug lifted in mechanical rhythm. See, this is us, she said, voice edged with the fury she'd bottled for weeks. The silences, the way we pretend. Evan leaned back on the couch, arms crossed, his jaw tightening. It's just breakfast, Mara. You're turning nothing into a project. His tone was even, measured, but the spark in his eyes ignited, rage mirroring hers, quick and contained. He stood abruptly, pacing the living room, the floorboards creaking under his steps. You want drama? Fine, but I'm not your subject. The argument uncoiled fast, words slicing the air. She jabbed at the screen. This isn't nothing. It's us drifting, and you're blind to it. Fury boiled in her chest, hot and unfiltered, as she grabbed the camera from the table, instinctively framing him. his broad shoulders rigid, face flushed. He snatched a blueprint from the side table, unrolling it with a snap, the paper crinkling like a shield. Enough. We'll fix the apartment instead. That wall's cracking, see? Lights shifting, throwing shadows everywhere. I'll redraw the plans tomorrow. Practical. Done. His voice flattened, the rage ebbing into something colder, more bewildering. He spread the blueprint across the coffee table, pencil scratching lines, ignoring the laptop's glow. Mara lowered the camera, her anger fracturing into a stunned hollow. The room felt vast, their shared space echoing with isolation. Outside, the afternoon sun dipped, casting the wall in a skewed beam that caught the hairline crack snaking upward, subtle, widening under the displaced light, unnoticed until now. She stood there, lens dangling, the weight of her own silence crashing in. How do you shatter a wall when he rebuilds it with blueprints? The question hung, unanswered, as he sketched on, the distance between them stretching like the shadow across the fracture. The following afternoon, in the studio once more, the late afternoon light slanted through the studio window, casting long shadows across the cluttered desk where Mara and Danica sat. Mara cradled her coffee mug, its handle worn smooth from years of shared mornings with Evan. She traced the faint hairline crack along its rim, barely visible, like the fissures she pretended not to see in their life together. The warmth from the drink had faded, leaving her fingers chilled, mirroring the exhaustion that weighed on her shoulders. Another interview wrapped, another voice echoing the themes of trust's quiet unraveling. But her own story stayed buried, a knot of unspoken fears tightening in her chest. Danica leaned back in her chair, her therapist's poise cracking just a fraction as she set down her own mug. Identical to Mara's, a mismatched pair from some long-ago gift. "You know," she said, voice low and deliberate, "I sit here all day, unpacking other people's silences, but mine, it's the one that keeps me up at night." She paused, eyes flicking to the window, as if the words needed permission from the fading light. "My partner and I, we're good at the surface. Dinners, plans, the right responses. But intimacy, it's like we're both waiting for the other to blink first. I catch myself holding back, afraid that admitting the doubt will make it real." Mara's mind reeled, the confession slicing through her fatigue like a dull blade. "She's saying it," she thought. "The thing I've been circling in every frame, every question I ask, but never turn on myself." Her pulse quickened, a weary ache settling deeper. How many times had she scripted this very exchange in her head, only to edit it out? Danica's words hung there, mirroring the polite voids in Mara's evenings with Evan. The way he'd nod through her updates on the project, eyes already drifting to his sketches. "You're doing the same," Danica pressed, leaning forward now, her gaze steady. "That calm you wear, it's armor, Mara, but it's keeping you both adrift. Ask him the hard questions, not in notes or footage, but face to face. What are you afraid he'll say? That the trust is already cracked beyond repair?" The mug trembled slightly in Mara's grip, the crack catching the light for a split second, a fragile line threatening to spiderweb. Exhaustion clawed at her. Why now? Why push when I'm this tired of pretending? But beneath it, a spark ignited, sharpening into resolve. She could see it. Evan across the breakfast table tomorrow. The unasked words finally spilling out. "If I don't, we'll just keep sipping from these broken cups, pretending they hold." Danica's vulnerability laid it bare. Silence didn't protect. It fed the fractures, widening them until nothing held. Mara nodded slowly, the weight shifting inside her, from drag to drive. But as Danica gathered her things, the question lingered unspoken in the air between them. Had she finally glimpsed her own fear enough to voice it? Later that evening, in the apartment hummed with the low whir of the projector, casting flickering shadows across the walls, where the afternoon light had already begun to fade. Mara sat on the edge of the couch, her fingers tracing the rim of a coffee mug, hairline cracks invisible in the dim glow. Evan leaned forward in his armchair, arms crossed, his architect's precision etched into the tight line of his jaw. Skepticism shadowed his eyes as she hit play, the reel unspooled on the screen. Raw interviews, couples murmuring about silences that widened like forgotten blueprints. Then her voiceover cut in, soft but unyielding. Mara's own words, recorded in the quiet of her studio. The distance starts in whispers we don't name. I feel it every morning, in the space between us. Like trust is a wall I built to keep the cracks from showing. The footage shifted to their kitchen. Stolen moments. Evan's back turned at the sink, her hand hovering unspoken over his shoulder. Evan's breath hitched, his fingers drumming the armrest in a rhythm that betrayed the storm beneath his calm. No blueprints here, no measured fixes, just the raw pulse of anxiety rising, unchecked. He glanced at her, eyes narrowing. This is what you've been hiding, turning us into Exhibit A? Mara met his gaze, her composure fracturing like the label on the old film canister beside the projector. Cracked along the edge, the title Trust barely legible, as if the word itself had splintered under pressure. Not hiding, seeing. Her voice trembled, not with drama, but the quiet admission of something long buried. Vulnerability bloomed in the air between them, turning their shared silence inside out. He paused the reel, the screen freezing on a close-up of their empty breakfast table. For a beat, the room held its breath. Then, slowly, his shoulders eased, skepticism giving way to a flicker of recognition. The invisible made stark, not as weapon, but as the first honest line they'd drawn together. You think this fixes it? But his tone softened, the question hanging, unanswered. A bridge or a break? The next morning, as the conversation lingered, the apartment light had dimmed again. That familiar fade creeping across the wall like a shadow, pulling back the covers. Mara sat on the edge of the couch, the laptop balanced on her knees, the unedited reel paused mid-frame. Evan's face hovered in the glow, his eyes, caught in the raw footage, staring at a point just beyond the lens. She hit play one last time, her voiceover threading through the speakers. Soft admissions of fear, the weight of silences unspoken. The air between them thickened, not with argument, but with the quiet press of something finally surfacing. Evan leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers tracing the hairline crack in his coffee mug. The ceramic felt rough under his thumb, a faint abrasion mirroring the snag in his chest. He exhaled, the sound ragged, like breath caught on a hook. That night, he said, voice low, not looking at her yet. The project deadline. You were editing late, and I came in with that sketch, the one for the firm's big pitch. Remember, you glanced up, nodded, went back to your screen. Mara's pulse quickened, a rebound from the reel's exposure. Her own words echoing back like a slap, turned inward. She nodded, the room's warmth suddenly too close, her skin prickling. I felt it then, he continued, eyes lifting to meet hers. Steady, but edged with fracture. Like I was just another angle in your frame. Invisible. Not because you meant it, but because I'd let it happen. Built these walls, thinking they'd hold everything steady. My designs, us, But failing at that, failing you, it started there. That doubt shut me down cold. His words landed not as a flood, but drops hitting parched ground, stirring the soil of her own guarded heart. She reached for the camera on the coffee table, its lens scratched from months of hurried setups. A rough, unpolished eye that had captured strangers' truths but blurred her own. Her fingers grazed the blemish, feeling the texture of overlooked flaws. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It cracked open, inviting her in. Could this bearing, his fear laid bare, stitch back the thread of us? The question hung unanswered as the fading light held them in its hesitant glow. Finally, days later in the studio, the late afternoon light slanted through the studio windows, casting long shadows across the editing bay. Mara sat at the console, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. The unedited reel paused on a frame of Evan's face, guarded, distant. Evan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the floor. Leo paced behind them, a tablet in hand, his energy a counterpoint to the room's quiet stagnation. "Look," Leo said, stopping abruptly. "This ending? It's too neat. Polished fade out on reconciliation. Audiences smell the varnish. We need the grit, the daily grind of it. Show the work." Mara's mind raced. "Neat? It's safe. No one sees the mess we've made." She glanced at Evan, his jaw tight. Disappointment coiled in her chest, sharp as the first edit she'd cut, slicing away their rawest moments to protect the facade. "It's not varnish," she murmured. "It's us, without the exposure." Evan shifted, his eyes meeting hers for a beat. "She's right. One slip, and it all unravels again." But the pull of simplicity tugged at him. The old habit of blueprints over blueprints, structures that held without question. What if we just wrap it? Let them infer the rest. His voice was even, but inside, frustration simmered. Why drag it out? We've said enough. Leo pulled up a chair, wedging between them. He tapped the screen, pulling up a rough cut, their voices overlapping in the apartment, hesitant admissions cutting through silence. "Infer? No. This is the hook, the vulnerability as practice. Not a happily ever after bow, but the mugs on the table, chipped but still matching." He nodded toward the side table, where their paired coffee mugs sat, steam curling faintly from the rims. Mara reached for hers, fingers tracing the hairline crack along the handle, barely visible, yet it caught the light, a silent fracture. Evan's mug mirrored it, placed just out of reach. She set hers down, the clink echoing. "Chipped, but we refill them every morning." Is that the story? The disappointment eased, replaced by a tentative spark. "Okay, rework the voiceover, layer in the questions we dodged." Evan uncrossed his arms, leaning forward. "Not alone in this edit." He nodded at Leo. "Add my notes on the build. How trust isn't a foundation, it's the maintenance." Their eyes locked again, longer this time, the air shifting from stale to charged. Leo grinned, scribbling. "There, collaborative cut, raw edges in." As the reel resumed, their reflections flickered on the screen, unmasked, tentative. Could they frame it all without slipping back into the gloss? The light dimmed outside, but the room felt warmer. The mugs, untouched, yet enduring.